산의 기세와 역동하는 바다가 만나는 도시 울산. 이 범상치 않은 땅에 써온 울산의 역사. 우리가 아는 울산보다 더 큰 울산이 있다. 우리가 꿈꾼 미래보다 더 큰 미래가 온다. 바다와 바람으로 만드는 에너지, 쓸수록 깨끗한 도시를 만드는 수소에너지. 동부가 에너지 중심 도시 울산. 원전 해체 산업을 리드하고 울산의 힘으로 한국의 미래를 열어가는 울산 경제 자유구역과 5대 특구로 성장하는 울산. 더 건강한 울산을 위해 새로운 분야의 리더가 되기 위해 준비하는 첨단 의료 산업 기반. 더 편리하고 깨끗한 선진 교통망. 자연과 공존하는 태화강 국가정원. 역사와 문화의 가치를 지켜나가는 울산. 이미 시작된 미래. 우리가 기다리는 울산. 울산의 미래로 가는 9개의 성장 다리.
We've been busy over the last 12 months. Take a deep breath. Green Investment Group, accelerating the green transition.
Energy is life. We all need it, and it's a source of progress. So today, to contribute to the sustainable development of the planet facing the climate challenge, we are moving forward, together, towards new energies. Energy is reinventing itself, and this energy journey is ours. Our ambition is to be a world-class player in the energy transition. That is why Total is transforming and becoming Total Energies.
More than ever, the planet needs a commitment. Energy must be generated in a sustainable way to become a source of life. This is our mission. Proudly, today we have taken the first steps in exploiting the strength of the wind as a source of clean and unlimited energy offshore.
As market leaders, it's our duty to contribute to this innovation. It's our duty to come into something more innovative, something out of the box. Actually, Windflow Atlantic is out of the box.
I would say that the biggest challenge that we have faced was actually to perform the installation and construction activities offshore during the winter, where we had to be inventive to overcome those challenges. The objective of the Windfloat Atlantic project was to go further. We have the project installed at 100-meter water depth to show that we could break through and sit these projects in what we call deep waters.
The big structures, which are really big, 30 meters is like an apartment with 10 floors. It's 60 meters wide, and it has been built in 2 shipyards. There was a shipyard in the north of Spain, Navantia shipyard, another shipyard in Lisnave, that's below of Lisbon. 2 floaters have been built there by the company Silva Matos, and they have been assembled in pieces, piece by piece, welded together as a big structure, a triangle structure, that then afterwards was put in the water and towed from the shipyard to the north of Spain, the harbor of Ferrol, where it was moored to the quayside.
So basically it all starts with prefabrication of steel parts and pieces to be later on assembled. It was important for us to test 2 different types of fabrication methods, of fabrication logistics and operations. This was the key, always conserving and keeping control environment.
Offshore activities are always planned onshore. From the design of the platforms, all the operations are prepared so that we can do it in the quickest and safest way for everybody involved.
Must have very skilled people with very special training. That's the main thing. Be safe, keep safe, work safe.
This good composition of partnership. Each of them brings something else. I will start with PPI, which is the smallest partner, but also very important, as PPI developed the floater technology. Then second is Repsol, so oil and gas experience. And last but not least, OW, Ocean Winds, I should say even the sponsor of Offshore Winds, the 2 founding companies, so EDPR and ENGIE, which brought the electric utility core business skills, which is development, construction and operation of energy assets.
OW owns a unique experience. I would say that it is in our plans to deploy those capabilities and this know-how in any market that gives those suitable conditions.
Welcome to the Wind-Float Atlantic. Join us and become part of the offshore energy future with a pioneer project worldwide. In the end, it's all about the wind energy, the ocean preservation, and above all, the planet's future.
How much wind energy would it take to power every household in Los Angeles, Paris, and Singapore. 6 gigawatts, the same as Shell is developing in wind projects across the USA, Europe, and Asia. To help customers reduce their emissions, Shell is building an integrated power business to provide more renewable and low-carbon energy through generation, trading, and supply. Wind power is crucial to this future. Shell's wind story starts in 2000, with 50 years of offshore expertise helping construct the UK's first offshore wind turbines. In 2007, Shell partners in Nordsee Wind to build the first 100-plus megawatt Netherlands offshore wind farm. 2016 is the launch of what is now Shell's Renewables and Energy Solutions business to find new ways to help customers decarbonise. In 2020, to develop 2 of the largest offshore wind farms in the USA, Shell partners in Atlantic Shores Offshore Wind and Mayflower Wind. And in the Netherlands, Shell and UECO win the Hollandse Kust Noord tender. Today, Borssele 3 and 4 in the Dutch North Sea are fully operational, built with Shell's expertise as part of the Blauwind consortium. Shell's target is to be a net zero emissions energy business by 2050, in step with society.
머나먼 태평양에서 불어오는 바람이 잠시 쉬어가는 길목. 깊고 푸른 동해바다에서 울산으로 더 큰 바람이 불어옵니다. 이제 울산이 깨끗하고 푸른 친환경 에너지를 만들어갑니다. 울산 부유식 해상풍력. 바람에 날개를 달다.
울산으로부터 58km 떨어진 동해바다. 연중 강한 바람이 부는 드넓은 대륙붕에 세계 최대 부유식 해상풍력 발전단지가 들어옵니다. 울산, 부산, 경남의 모든 가구가 사용해도 남는 전력을 만들고 연간 930만 톤의 이산화탄소를 줄여 탄소 중립의 꿈에 한 발 더 다가서는 바다 위의 청정발전소. 울산 부유식 해상풍력. 지구를 위한 좋은 바람을 만들다.
전 세계를 누렸던 울산의 조선과 해양 플랜트 기술. 이제 동해 바람을 만나 다시 한번 바다의 꿈을 펼칩니다. 울산이 만들어가는 도전의 역사가, 융합의 기술이 친환경 에너지 강국을 만들어갑니다. 울산 부유식 해상풍력. 기술로 앞서가는 최고의 바람을 만나다. 아무도 울산의 성공을 의심하지 않는다. 지금도 울산의 성공에 찬사를 보낸다. 조국의 미래를 열었다고, 역사를 써왔다고, 이룰 건 다 이뤘다고. 과연 그럴까? 지금이 진짜 우리의 전성기일까? 지금이 가장 위대한 울산일까? 천년을 이어온 국제도시 울산. 산의 기세와 역동하는 바다가 만나는 도시 울산. 이 범상치 않은 땅에 써온 울산의 역사. 우리가 아는 울산보다 더 큰 울산이 있다. 우리가 꿈꾼 미래보다 더 큰 미래가 온다. 바다와 바람으로 만드는 에너지, 쓸수록 깨끗한 도시를 만드는 수소에너지, 동부가 에너지 중심 도시 울산, 원전 해체 산업을 리드하고 울산의 힘으로 한국의 미래를 열어가는 울산 경제 자유구역과 5대 특구로 성장하는 울산. 더 건강한 울산을 위해 새로운 분야의 리더가 되기 위해 준비하는 첨단 의료 산업 기반, 더 편리하고 깨끗한 선진 교통망, 자연과 공존하는 태화강 국가정원, 역사와 문화의 가치를 지켜나가는 울산. 이미 시작된 미래, 우리가 기다리는 울산. 울산의 미래로 가는 9개의 성장 다리.
We've been busy over the last 12 months. Take a deep breath. Green Investment Group, accelerating the green transition.
Energy is life. We all need it. And it's a source of progress. So today, to contribute to the sustainable development of the planet facing the climate challenge, we are moving forward, together, towards new energies. Energy is reinventing itself. And this energy journey is ours. Our ambition is to be a world-class player in the energy transition. That is why Total is transforming and becoming Total Energies.
More than ever, the planet needs a commitment. Energy must be generated in a sustainable way to become a source of life. This is our mission. Proudly, today we have taken the first steps in exploiting the strength of the wind as a source of clean and unlimited energy offshore.
As market leaders, it's our duty to contribute to this innovation. It's our duty to come into something more innovative, something out of the box. Actually, Windflow Atlantic is out of the box.
I would say that the biggest challenge that we have faced was actually to perform the installation and construction activities offshore during the winter, where we had to be inventive to overcome those challenges. The objective of the Windfloat Atlantic project was to go further. We have the project installed at 100-meter water depth to show that we could break through and sit these projects in what we call deep waters.
The big structures, which are really big, 30 meters is like an apartment with 10 floors. It's 60 meters wide, and it has been built in 2 shipyards. There was a shipyard in the north of Spain, Navantia shipyard, another shipyard in Lisnave, that's below of Lisbon. 2 floaters have been built there by the company Silva Matos, and they have been assembled in pieces, piece by piece, and welded together as a big structure, a triangle structure, that then afterwards was put in the water and towed from the shipyard to the north of Spain, the harbor of Ferrol, where it was moored to the quayside.
So basically it all starts with prefabrication of steel parts and pieces to be later on assembled. It was important for us to test 2 different types of fabrication methods, of fabrication logistics and operations. This was the key, always conserving and keeping controlled environment.
Offshore activities are always planned onshore. From the design of the platforms, all the operations are prepared so that we can do it in the quickest and safest way for everybody involved.
You must have very skilled people with very special training. That's the main thing. Be safe, keep safe, work safe.
This good composition of partnership. Each of them brings something else. I will start with PPI, which is the smallest partner, but also very important, as PPI developed the floater technology. Then second is Repsol, so oil and gas experience. And last but not least, OW, Ocean Winds, I should say even the sponsor of Offshore Winds, the 2 founding companies, so DPR and NG, which brought the electric utility core business skills, which is development, construction and operation of energy assets.
OW owns a unique experience. I would say that it is in our plans to deploy those capabilities and this know-how in any market that gives those suitable conditions.
Welcome to the wind-float Atlantic. Join us and become part of the offshore energy future with a pioneer project worldwide. In the end, it's all about the wind energy, the ocean preservation, and above all, the planet's future.
How much wind energy would it take to power every household in Los Angeles, Paris and Singapore? 6 gigawatts, the same as Shell is developing in wind projects across the USA, Europe and Asia. To help customers reduce their emissions, Shell is building an integrated power business to provide more renewable and low-carbon energy through generation, trading and supply. Wind power is crucial to this future. Shell's wind story starts in 2000. With 50 years of offshore expertise, helping construct the UK's first offshore wind turbines. In 2007, Shell partners in Nordsee Wind to build the first 100-plus megawatt Netherlands offshore wind farm. 2016 is the launch of what is now Shell's Renewables and Energy Solutions business to find new ways to help customers decarbonise. In 2020, to develop two of the largest offshore wind farms in the USA, Shell partners in Atlantic Shores Offshore Wind and Mayflower Wind. And in the Netherlands, Shell and UECO win the Hollandse Kust Noord tender. Today, Borssele 3 and 4 in the Dutch North Sea are fully operational, built with Shell's expertise as part of the Blauwind consortium.
감사하겠습니다. 또한 여러분의 안전을 위해 잠시 안내 말씀드리겠습니다. 현재 여러분이 계신 곳은 울산 전시 컨벤션 센터 3층 컨벤션 홀 ABC 홀입니다. 비상시 여러분의 안전을 위한 대피 경로 또 주의사항을 말씀드리겠습니다. 현재 홀 벽면에 부착된 안내도를 확인하셔서 자신의 위치 출구 그리고 가장 가까운 비상구를 미리 파악하시기 바라겠습니다.
빼자고 얘기한 거야? 빼고 요거는 들어갈 수 있어. 말이가.
여기다 넣을까요?
사이에 넣어야 되겠다.
네. 근데 안 나가네.
먼저 안 나갔어. 이분에서 그래서 자연스럽게 들어오셔서 자리 착석하시고 들어갈 거예요. 그러니까 공식 행사가 아니에요.
그렇죠. 아니 근데 네 그러게요. 앞에 분들이 안 앉아서 안 앉으시나? 시장님이 안 앉으시나?
뒤에 계시니까 착석하시고 다 인사하시고 그러고 앉는 거예요. 시간 개념이 좀 없지.
네, 다시 한번 안내 말씀드리겠습니다. 부유식 해상풍력 국제포럼 2021이 곧 시작될 예정입니다. 지금 현재 전시 관람을 하고 계시는 내빈 여러분들께서는 자리에 착석해 주시면 감사하겠습니다. 또한 잠시 안내 말씀드리겠습니다. 오늘 자리를 지정받으신 VIP 내빈 여러분 외에는 행사장 인원이 49명으로 제한이 되어 있는 관계로 온라인으로 오늘 포럼을 시청해 주시면 감사하겠습니다. 네, 여러분 협조 감사드립니다. 네, 마지막으로 다시 한 번만 안내 말씀 그리고 부탁 말씀드리겠습니다. 곧 오늘 포럼이 시작할 예정입니다. 내빈 여러분들께서는 자리에 착석해 주시기 바랍니다. 근데 그 시의장님이랑 지금 아직 시의원님이 안 왔는데 두 분이요. 혹시 아니 오신다고 오늘 이분이 아직 안 오셨고 네, 부유식 해상풍력 국제포럼 2021 행사를 시작하겠습니다. 여러분 모두 자리에 착석해 주시기 바랍니다. 네, 여러분 안녕하십니까?
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I am Ian Hwa, your MC today for the International Forum of Floating Offshore Wind Farm 2021. First of all, thank you very much for your time here in joining us with the forum as speakers and VIPs, and of course as audience through online. Thank you very much for your time. At today's forum, we provide Korean-English simultaneous interpretation, and if you would like to use a receiver, or if you're watching through online, you can choose the channel 1 for Korean and 2 for English. This forum is being live broadcast through YouTube. So without further ado, let us start the International Forum of Floating Offshore Wind Farm 2021, hosted by Ulsan Metropolitan City and organized by Ulsan Technopark and Korea Hydrogen Energy Association and sponsored by Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy and Korea Wind Energy Industry Agency. And this forum will be a timely opportunity among the investing companies wanting to establish the wind farm and the companies interested in joining the project. We look forward to your continued support and interest in the wind farm to be built in Ulsan. Before we start the forum, let us walk you through what we're going to do today. The first session is opening ceremony, and we will hear some remarks and take the group photos, and that will be followed by the second session comprising of keynote speeches and the government agencies' presentation and the sponsoring company's presentation. And we'll skip the Pledge of Allegiance due to the time constraint. And let us invite our VIPs, whose presence we are honored to have. First of all, we have Mayor Song Chul-ho of Ulsan Metropolitan City leading the 9 Bridges for Growth. Thank you. And we have President Oh Yan-chan from Ulsan University. Next, we have Chairperson Park Byung-seok from Ulsan Metropolitan City Council. And President Kwon Soo-young from Ulsan Technopark. Thank you. Next, we have Director Moon Yang-taek from Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy. And we have Commissioner Park Yong-han from the Ulsan Office for Oceans and Fisheries. And we have Councilman Lee Si-woo from Industry and Construction Committee from Ulsan Metropolitan City Council. And we have Chief Director Kim Chang-seo from Korean Energy Agency. And we have President Lee Yoon-chol from Ulsan Chamber of Commerce. And next, we have Vice President Cho Sang-gi from Korea East-West Power. Welcome. And we have Vice President Lee Dong-hwi from Korea Hydrogen Industry Association. Next, we have Chairman Kim Hyun-min from the Floating Offshore Wind Farm Operating Committee. And we have Vice Chair Kim Man-sung from the Office of National Assemblyman Lee Chae-ik. Next, we have Mr. Kim Dong-hyun. And we have Project Manager Park Byung-seok from Korea Institute of Energy Technology Evaluation and Planning. And next, we also have some important guests from investing companies. We have President Ju Yong-gyu from Moonmu Baram and President Oh Ji-won from Shell Korea. And we have President Jacques Etienne Michel from Equinor South Korea and Deputy Project Director Park Do-hyun from Firefly Project. And we have Managing Director Choi Woo-jin from GIG Korea and Korean head Shin Jung-won from Total Energies. And we have Mr. Guzman Figa, Head of Business Development Asia Pacific, and Mr. Oyvind Larsen, Technical Director of the KF Wind. And we have President Yu Tae-seung and Co-President Jesper Kraup Holst from COP Korea. And next we have some presidents from Korean leading companies. First, we have Director and CEO Chung Sun-young from Shinhan Heavy Industries. And we have Deputy Managing Director Jung Jong-jin from Hyundai Heavy Industries. And Managing Director Kim Jong-il from Tucson Heavy Industries. Last but not least, Director Park Sung-jin from Sejin Heavy Industries. Thank you very much again for your precious time, despite your busy schedule. And next, we will invite President Kwon Soo-young from Ulsan Technopark, a host organization of this forum. Please welcome him with a round of applause.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Kwon Soo-young, president of Ulsan Technopark. I am very honored to be standing here at the 2021 International Forum of Floating Offshore Wind Farm, which marks the 3rd anniversary this year. Let me extend my sincere gratitude to Mayor Song Chol-woo, Chairman Park Byung-seok of City Council, organizers from Ulsan Metropolitan City Government, and all of those who have worked hard to prepare for this event. My special thanks also go to those who show much interest in the floating offshore wind power industry, from parliament, government, media, research institutions, and etc. Especially, I'd like to thank Director Moon Yang-taek of the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy for traveling a long way to be here, as well as all participants who are joining us on site and online. The COVID-19 pandemic is deeply affecting all of our society. Deeply, we are witnessing fundamental changes in economy, daily lives, and standard of value judgment. There have also been huge changes in growth strategies and energy policies of countries around the world. In particular, shrink of energy demand due to the pandemic has brought a huge impact on our society, more than any other economic phenomenon, through which many countries have declared carbon neutrality, increasing the reality of climate change responses. On August 31st, the Korean Parliament passed the Basic Act on Carbon Neutrality and Green Growth for response to the climate crisis. This so-called Carbon Neutrality Act specifies that Korea aims to be carbon neutral by 2050. It also includes greenhouse gas reduction and adaptation to climate change. Doing so, Korea became the 14th country which presents 2050 carbon neutrality vision and legislates its implementation. At the proclamation ceremony for nurturing floating offshore wind energy that was held in Ulsan on May 6, President Moon Jae-in said the seaward wind is like carbon-free petroleum resources of the 21st century. He added that the largest floating offshore wind farm would be built off the coast of Ulsan by 2030. Furthermore, he mentioned gas field in the East Sea of Ulsan that made Korea the 95th oil-producing country in the world starts a new challenge, and now Ulsan takes a leap to the industrial city of clean energy era from the one of fossil fuel. Ulsan City announced 3 strategies of laying a foundation for innovative growth of floating offshore wind energy, leading the international green energy market with preemptive technology development and pushing ahead with affiliated projects during the ceremony, revealing its ambition to achieve energy transition and carbon neutrality through vitalizing the floating offshore wind industry. Floating offshore wind power utilizes relatively good quality of wind condition out at sea, becoming a good renewable energy model. I believe we are in a position to secure outstanding technology, and it is possible to become a leader in the offshore wind power market in the years to come. I think it's very meaningful to hold this year's International Forum of Floating Offshore Wind Farm taking place in Ulsan for 2 days, starting from today. I hope all the participants and those who are watching online have a valuable time. Let me once again thank all of you for taking your time, and I ask your constant attention and support to Ulsan floating wind power. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, President Kwon, for your wonderful remarks. It opens today's international forum, and I can see how much enthusiasm you have for floating offshore wind. And now, I'd like to invite
Mayor of Ulsan Metropolitan City, Mayor Song Cho-ho, who's working hard to grow Ulsan into a leading global city. Please welcome him with a round of applause. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. First, I'd like to welcome everyone to the International Forum of Floating Offshore Wind Farm 2021, the third of its kind. And I thank the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy organizations, and 5 private investment companies and business leaders in and outside of Korea, whose presence we are honored to have. And of course, my most special thanks goes to those of you watching this online. Please understand that we cannot have as many people as we hoped because of quarantine measures, but let us hope that at next year's event, we get to see one another face-to-face and celebrate the event. The floating offshore wind farm in Ulsan is a key project and one of the key means in bringing about a reduction of fossil fuel and shift to renewable energy. Ulsan is also in a good position to take advantage of the related industries, including shipbuilding and steel-making companies. Ulsan City has worked hard to meet the basic requirements to create the wind at Ulsan coast. Last October, we completed the 4 pieces of LiDAR, and we completed the consultation with the fishing community in Ulsan. And we are starting to see some tangible results one by one. And GIG Total Energies got the first license for the project in July. And we also held a ceremony among the companies for local supply chain. And now, the floating offshore wind farm is one of the Green New Deal projects of Korean government and has been receiving a lot of support from the national policymakers. And in order to achieve an aim of balanced growth of local governments, we need to keep this moment going. And Busan and Gyeongnam areas' shipbuilding and marine plant technologies will help Ulsan to help grow the floating offshore wind farm projects. And I believe the production and design and other related processes should happen in Ulsan area, because Ulsan area should be a leading place which is going to bring about the development of economies of neighboring regions. If we look at the example of the UK, who rather shows the success in creating many jobs and employment, even though the project was happening overseas. So we need to help the project be reborn as a project that can help the local economy. And the core process should happen in Ulsan in order to create a fundamental element that could enrich the basic elements of the local economy. And I believe the equation will be the same for the rest of the 4 companies, and also for the other companies, including RWE and Binar, that are interested in taking part in the project happening in Ulsan. Ulsan is still hungry. 6 gigawatts or 9 gigawatts are not enough, because Ulsan has an infrastructure and technology that is capable of building the best level of shipbuilding and marine plant technologies. The US has built 5.6 gigawatts. And of course, it has planned to do that in the near future. And Taiwan and Japan also are looking at a huge project reaching 200 gigawatts. The floating offshore wind farm is a blue ocean area, and Ulsan is working hard to act preemptively. And one of the good news that we're hearing is that GIG Total Energies is able to expect the generation amount, electricity generated, and it is expecting to produce 56% of the total demand, which is almost comparable to the UK case. And this is the good news, showing that Ulsan is capable of covering the neighboring regions, including Busan, Ulsan, and Gyeongnam area. And Hyundai Motor Company is expecting to produce its car, the total amount of its domestic production powered by renewable energy, to be one of the RE100 companies with global competitiveness. 36 trillion won was put into the project, and it is expected to create 111 trillion won as a result. It has such a huge promise. And I believe today's forum will be a timely opportunity for all the companies related for better communication and networking, and also to talk about better future. In the area of energy transition, the wind of Ulsan will be a hope for the earth and for the environment, and also for the energy future. Thank you again for your time, and I wish you all the good luck. Thank you very much for your remark, Mayor. Floating offshore wind farm will see the rebirth of Ulsan as the core city, and to the future where Ulsan is comparable to the UK. And next we'll invite the City Councilman, Chairman Park Byung-seok.
And now I'd like to invite Chairman Park Byung-soo of Ulsan Metropolitan City Council, who makes great efforts to make the council which takes care of ordinary people's life. Please welcome him with a round of applause. Good afternoon, everybody. I am Park Byung-seok, the Chairman of City Council, and congratulations on the opening of the International Forum, which seeks better future of floating offshore wind power. I'd like to extend my words of welcome and encouragement to participating experts and organizers. Let me express my sincere gratitude to President Kwon Soo-young of Ulsan Technopark and other organizers who provide a venue to share our wisdom for your hard work. And also my special thanks go to Director Moon Yang-taek, who will make presentations, and all the experts and organizers. Thank you for joining us. And once again, and my special thanks go to Mayor Song Chol-ho and President Kwon Soo-young for providing this opportunity. And also, my thanks go to Chairman Jung Chan-soo and officials from the Korea Wind Energy Association for your full cooperation and support. Floating offshore wind power has now become the symbol of the new growth engine industry representing Ulsan. President Moon Jae-in and the Korean government have promised to provide wholehearted support with Ulsan's floating offshore wind project as the peak of the Korean New Deal. Accordingly, Ulsan City is also focusing on floating offshore wind as a key project of the Ulsan version of New Deal, in line with realizing carbon neutrality and new renewable energy transition together with overcoming global crisis. Floating offshore wind power in Ulsan has already confirmed its feasibility and growth potential. Leading companies from home and abroad are expressing their hopes to join the WEC. Discovering gas field in the East Sea gave us hope to become an oil-producing country, and now the offshore wind energy project that is going to take place off the coast of Ulsan will be a monumental achievement to lay a groundwork for energy development. We still have hardships and pending issues, but I'm confident that we will succeed in floating offshore wind power as an engine to bring better future for the world and humanity. I ask you to garner strength and wisdom at this forum, and the City Council, including myself, will not spare cooperation and support. And thank you once again for taking your valuable time to join us, and I wish all of you success and development. Thank you very much, Chairman. And he mentioned about today's event, and I can feel the love for today's event.
해상 풍력 발전을 위해 힘쓰시는
Next, we will invite President Jung Chan-soo of Korea Wind Energy Industry Association, who sent a video for a remark. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I am Jung Chan-soo, President of Korea Wind Energy Industry Association. First of all, congratulations on the opening of the International Forum of Floating Offshore Wind Farm 2021. And I also thank the Mayor Song Chul-ho of Ulsan Metropolitan City and Chairperson Park Byung-seok of Ulsan Metropolitan City Council for hosting this event, and other stakeholders of this city, and President Kwon Soo-young of Ulsan Technopark, who organized this event, and President Kim Bang-hee, Korea Hydrogen Industry Association. Thank you, and all those who worked hard to successfully put together this event. And Ulsan citizens and other related persons joining us here and through online, also thank you very much. The world has been suffering from a longer than expected COVID-19 and extreme weather conditions resulting in various natural disasters. Experts warn that the current crisis is not unassociated with the climate change, and that it may bring about a serious situation that threatens the life of everyone on the earth. International community has become more keen about climate change. We're told to reduce fossil fuel use, to reduce greenhouse gases, and to shift to renewable energy, all as part of active efforts for global energy transition. Particularly, the US, China, and EU and many other countries have worked to address climate crisis by declaring carbon neutrality and expanding renewable energy markets. South Korea, too, has moved actively since President Moon's 2050 net zero declaration last December by announcing 2030 national greenhouse gas reduction target and expressing strong commitment to energy transfer, including mostly renewable energy. As of 2020, 35 gigawatts of offshore wind farm was established globally, and more recently, increasing rate of capacity exceeds that of onshore wind farm. An offshore wind farm is one of the key means to realize carbon neutrality. Korean government aims to use three-sided geography of ours to its advantage and actively communicate with local community to become one of the top 5 wind farm powerhouses in the world while providing full support for promoting offshore wind farm. Floating offshore wind farm is built at far sea that has less noise and visual pollution while utilizing better wind resources, making it great next-generation technology. It is still in the infant stage, but many countries with advanced technologies like the UK, France, and European countries, and US, China, Japan, and Taiwan have started many projects. And the GWC forecasts that by 2030, about 16.5 gigawatts would be built around the world, opening a 1 gigawatt per year market for floating offshore wind farm. Offshore wind farm can create synergy effect along with machinery, electronics and electricity, steel and IT industry, as well as with shipbuilding industry. Ulsan-led floating offshore wind can also take advantage of shipbuilding, steel, heavy metal industries, and is expected to become a leading city with its big potential and sharp competitive edge. The success of floating offshore wind farm off the coast of Ulsan City will surely be a timely opportunity for Korea's energy transfer and economic development. Our association will also do our best to help establish healthy industrial ecology that is also globally competent. In closing, I'd like to thank all of you once again for joining us with the forum. And I hope to see the continued support from all of you in the floating offshore wind farm in Korea. Thank you very much for the meaningful speech, even through the video. And next we'll move on to the group photo session in celebration of the opening of the forum and in reaffirming our commitment to the project in Ulsan. So we'd like to invite all our valuable guests into this stage.
Please. Yes, I would like to ask all the foreign participants as well to the stage. We're going to have a group photo opportunity. 네, 총장님 가운데로 와주시면 감사하겠습니다. 안 오시는데요. 네, 감사합니다. 이렇게 해서 내빈 여러분들을 무대 위로 모셨습니다.
We have all our VIPs at the center of the stage. So even though we cannot see your smile,
our face is half covered by the mask. 네, 감사합니다. 그리고 화이팅 포즈 한번 할까요? 대한민국의 자존심이죠. 다 같이 주먹을 불끈 쥐고 Please use your right hand to make a very strong fist. And we're going to say fighting all together for the successful development of the wind farm. 네, 다 같이 화이팅 외치겠습니다. 하나, 둘, 셋, 화이팅! 네, 협조해주신 내빈 여러분 진심으로 감사드립니다. Thank you very much for your cooperation. 네, 이렇게 해서 내빈 여러분들을 모시고
yes, that group photo session wraps up the opening ceremony of today's forum, and awaiting us is keynote speech and project presentation that is about to start at 2:35. which we passed. So without any delay, we are going to start the keynote speech session. We have 5 presentations from 5 organizations, and for those speakers who can't be here due to the COVID situation, they sent the video for the presentation. So we will invite President Oh Ji-won from Shell Korea as the first keynote speaker. Please welcome her with a round of applause.
Good afternoon. My name is Oh Ji-won.
My name is Ji-won Oh. I am the country chair for Shell companies in Korea. First of all, I'd like to express my deepest appreciation to Mayor Song and the Ulsan City for organizing this conference. Shell has various businesses in Korea, including LNG, lubricants, chemicals, and we do provide services to the refineries and the power sector. It is a great pleasure for Shell to have the opportunity to share some thoughts on offshore wind with you today. This is just a kind note from our legal colleagues, a reminder not to invest in Shell based on what I have shared with you today. I would like to share some topics with you today. Powering Progress is a strategy that was refreshed earlier this year for Shell. I'd like to also touch upon renewable and energy solutions and our wind, as well as some Korea opportunities. First of all, so for Shell's strategy, we call it Powering Progress. And that's our strategy to net zero emissions. Powering Progress has 4 main goals. And as you can see, one over here, the Powering Progress is to generate value for our shareholders. It must be profitable. With our customers, we also aim to get to net zero emissions, and in doing so, achieving it is a main part of our strategy. Powering Progress also means powering lives and livelihood. So through our products and activities, and we want to support an inclusive society. It also means respecting nature by protecting the environment, reducing waste, and making a positive contribution to biodiversity. As you see from this chart here, Shell has set a target. We want to achieve net zero emissions by 2050 or sooner. Renewable electricity is central to this transformation. Electricity is the fastest growing part of the energy system, and when generated from renewable sources, such as wind, it has a big role to play in reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And that is why Shell is building an interconnected power business, from generating electricity to buying and selling it, storing it, and supplying directly to customers to power homes, businesses, and vehicles. So we're very encouraged to see the positive changes in the Korean power market. And currently, as you can see from the chart, we are interested in looking at the offshore wind opportunity here in Ulsan. And I really think that we can look forward to more integrated power business, as we can see in the chart for Korea. A little bit about Shell and wind. Now, wind is critical to our mission to build an interconnected power system. Shell, as you know, is one of the world's most advanced companies in offshore engineering. We have over 50 years of offshore experience in oil and gas in the North Sea and 40 years in the Gulf of Mexico. We see many places where these technical and commercial capabilities can be transferred to offshore wind. With 20 years or more experience in wind, power trading in over 20 countries, and we have a global team of wind experts in Europe, the US, and Asia, we are well positioned to further grow our wind business. The total installed capacity of our wind portfolio is more than 6 gigawatts, with an additional 800 megawatts in early-stage floating wind developments. The total installed capacity offshore is about 840 megawatts. Our onshore total installed capacity is over 300 megawatts. While Shell sees opportunities in both onshore and offshore, we are very interested in offshore because it enables the generation of very large-scale renewable electricity. So, why would you choose to work with Shell? Very, very simply, as you can see, I've touched upon the experience that Shell has. Many decades of very, very deep experience, not just the breadth and depth. We have the experience, but also the expertise. As you can see in the middle there, Shell can manage and coordinate complex projects through their entire life cycles. And we also, throughout the development, construction, and operation, we have a very strong focus on safety. You can also see the partnerships that we are very known for. You know, wind projects do require teamwork, and it requires many different people in different sectors, including the coastal communities, other developers, governments, and vendors. So floating offshore wind, for right now, is still very expensive, but we do believe that this will, through enabling regulations and the increasing scale and innovation, the costs will come down over time, such as we have witnessed with bottom-fixed technology. It's a lovely design we have here, as you can see over here on the wall as well. Currently, our growing wind portfolio consists of projects in the US, the Netherlands, France, and here in Korea. We're very proud and excited to have Munmu Baram in Korea, and we have recently incorporated the project into a project company. Munmu Baram recently finished its geotechnical and geophysics survey successfully. And we're concluding our wind measurement campaign as well. I do hope you will remember that. Soon, my colleague, Ju Young-gyu, our project director, will talk more about the details in our project in the following session. I want to highlight one thing, and it's the link between offshore wind and hydrogen. So what you see here is what we call the North H2 project in northern Netherlands. Shell announced plans to be part of a consortium that aims to build the largest European green hydrogen project capable of producing 800,000 tons of green hydrogen in the Netherlands by 2040. If given the go-ahead, North H2 will be powered by electricity generated by an offshore wind farm in the North Sea. Green hydrogen, produced through electrolysis using renewable power such as wind and solar, is a key priority for the European Green Deal. So offshore wind can provide electricity to produce large-scale green hydrogen. And of course, as we know, this could provide flexibility and balancing required to integrate a large share of renewable energy in the electricity grid. At the same time, hydrogen could be used as a fuel to power mobility. So, what are some of the opportunities we can find in Korea? There are many, but I'd like to highlight maybe just a couple here. I do believe Korea has the potential to become a major floating offshore wind hub. I think our mayor and many of our distinguished guests touched upon the great and rich environment that is provided in the industrial sense, in the commercial sense, in the academic sense that is provided here in the area of Ulsan. Another point is that floating offshore wind to hydrogen, this is a key combination to enable the energy transition. And I do believe that's why we have many representatives of the hydrogen community here with us today. Another opportunity is that the sustainable development of the offshore wind industry would benefit from a long-term enabling policy framework and market environment. As we know, policy must go hand in hand with what we aim to achieve for these very important projects. So finally, let me just leave you with 3 points. I'd like for you to remember that we at Shell, we are committed to net zero emissions. In fact, our targets are linked to remuneration of our staff. And floating offshore wind to hydrogen is a key combination to enable the energy transition. And with the government's strong support, I think Korea, and especially Ulsan, is well positioned to realize the potential of offshore wind to hydrogen system. And lastly, a call to action. We can't do this alone. In order for us to develop a sustainable offshore wind industry and to ultimately achieve our net zero emissions goal, we, all of us, government, industry, academia, we need to work together hand in hand to achieve this ambitious goal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Oh, for your insightful and informative presentation. 네, 좋은 발표 정말 잘 들었습니다.
Thank you very much for your wonderful keynote speech, and let me introduce our next speaker.
We'll invite President Jacques-Etienne Michel from Equinor, South Korea, and he will talk about floating offshore wind and how offshore wind is going to open a new, bright future. Please welcome him with a round of applause.
안녕하세요. 만나서 반갑습니다. 제 이름 Jacques-Etienne Michel입니다. My name is Jacques-Etienne Michel. I am the country managing director for Equinor in Korea. Equinor is delighted to be here today at the Floating Offshore Wind Forum. We are delighted to be able to play a contributing role in the effort of the Korean government to achieve net zero. Public interest in carbon neutrality and offshore wind is high, and it's encouraging to see that Korea is stepping forward to meeting its goal. Today, I would like to explain how about Equinor and how we can contribute to Ulsan and Korea's plans for achieving carbon neutrality with renewable energy. First, Equinor has 5 decades of experience as an energy provider. We have a focused strategy built on our strengths and technology leadership. We aim to be an industry leader in the energy transition. Our net zero ambition are backed by action to create value as an early mover and industry shaper. These actions are driven by ambitious goals for 2030 to accelerate the transition. 30% reduction in net carbon intensity by 2035 for Equinor's activities. Allocate more than 50% of gross capex into renewables and low-carbon solutions by 2030. With today's capex level, this is approximately $5 to $6 billion per year. And we want to reach 12 to 16 gigawatt renewable capacity by 2030, heavily weighted towards offshore wind. 90% of the capex and 2/3 of the capacity will be offshore wind. A net zero world needs offshore wind to grow fast and at scale. Close to 80% of this growth will need floating solutions. And that is why Equinor is the first company that started to operate a commercial floating offshore wind farm, which is Hywind Scotland, already in 2017. Ulsan and Korea are paving the way in building a new industry for the next wave of renewable energy, floating offshore wind. In 2009, Equinor first began testing floating technology with Hywind Demo. In 2017, we started production at Hywind Scotland and proved the viability of floating offshore wind. For its third consecutive year, Hywind Scotland, the world's first floating offshore wind farm, reached the highest average capacity factor for any wind farm in the UK, with an average of capacity factor of 57.1%. Now, with the construction of Hywind Tampen to become the world's largest, we are showing scalability. This is an important step forwards to commercialization. Between Hywind Demo and Hywind Scotland, the capex per megawatt hour was reduced by 70%. And we expect a further 40% drop between Hywind Scotland and Hywind Tampen. As you can see, our offshore experience and project management expertise from the North Sea and around the world enables us to lead the way and further develop floating offshore wind in a safe and efficient way. And we are currently studying the environment at Dongae and Firefly to fully assess the conditions. Today, we see opportunities and potential for Equinor, and we are currently developing a pipeline of 3 gigawatts in Korea for offshore wind, both bottom fixed and floating. As mentioned, close to 80% of the world offshore wind resources potential is in water deeper than 60 meters. Ulsan is a good example of how freeing wind power can open a world of new markets and opportunities. Water depths around Dongae and Firefly will require floating solution to meet Korea's ambition for achieving 12 gigawatts in offshore wind. The Dongae 1 project is being progressed together with Korean National Oil Company and East West Power Company. Here, we have ambition to develop the first floating 200 megawatt offshore wind farm in Korea. Next to Dongae, we are also progressing with the Firefly wind farm project Equinor. Equinor is performing wind measurements needed to further investigate the possibility of developing and constructing a floating offshore wind project with the potential of 800 megawatt. Equinor is also in early stage of developing a further 2 gigawatts of offshore wind in the south, both bottom fixed and floating. Furthermore, we have relationship not only with co-developers like KNOC and EWP, but also with those in the supply chain who we know from decades of constructions, orders of Korean yards. Equinor has a collaborative approach to engaging with all stakeholders in the areas where we do business, communicating with local communities, including fishermen, is an important aspect of our activities. We believe we have a responsibility as early mover to do it right. As a conclusion, Equinor is experienced with proven technology, with the world's first and most efficient floating offshore wind farm currently in production. We are committed to support the Korean New Green Deal ambition, and we are working towards building competence locally. Since opening an office in Korea late 2018, we have now more than 20 persons working on the ground to build Ulsan and Korea as a hub for floating offshore wind. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing concrete and specific energy transition plans with us. 네, 좋은 발표 잘 들었습니다. 유럽 및 글로벌 지역에서 쌓은 노하우가 한국으로 잘 적용이
Thank you very much for the insightful presentation. I see how the plans are going well in Ulsan and in Korea. And I really hope for the best. And we will invite the third speaker, Monsieur Julien Pouget from Total Energies, and he sent his video.
Good afternoon, Mayor Song Chul-ho of Ulsan Metropolitan City. Good afternoon to all. My name is Julien Pouget. I'm Senior Vice President of the Renewables Division at Total Energies. Before I start, I would like to particularly thank Mr. Mayor Song Chul-ho of Ulsan Metropolitan City for organizing the Ulsan International Forum of Floating Offshore Wind Farm and for giving Total Energies this second opportunity to actively participate in the forum. Let me first start with a quick overview of our company. Total Energies is a broad energy company active in more than 113 countries, producing oil, biofuels, natural gas, and green gases, renewables, and electricity, with the ambition to become net zero by 2050. As part of this ambition, we are building a large portfolio of activities in renewables and electricity, with more than 10 gigawatts of gross renewable capacity worldwide at the end of 2021, and we are targeting 35 gigawatts in operation by 2025 and 100 gigawatts ambition by 2030, with the objective to being among the world's top 5 renewable energies players. In this context, we started to develop offshore wind assets about 2 years ago with the ambition to become a key player in bottom-fixed offshore wind and one of the world leaders of floating offshore wind. Today, we have 6 gigawatts pipeline of offshore wind projects under development and construction. More than 3.5 gigawatts are bottom-fixed offshore wind projects, with 1.5 gigawatts round 4 lease bed in the UK with our partner GIG, 1.5 gigawatts with Seagreen, Scotland's largest offshore wind farm, and 640 megawatts with the project Yunlin in Taiwan, one of the largest offshore projects under construction in Asia today. We have also secured 30 megawatts pioneering floating offshore wind pilot project with Eolmed in France, and a 100 megawatt pre-commercial floating offshore wind project in UK called Erebus with Simply Blue Energy. Last but not least, we have around 2.5 gigawatts of floating offshore wind projects under development with Bada Energy here in South Korea. And this is our absolutely key set of assets, obviously, in the field of offshore wind floating. At Total Energies, we can obviously build on a very strong offshore operations know-how and oil and gas competencies, which is a key competitive advantage which can be leveraged for floating offshore wind. We are very familiar with offshore architectures, the supply chain, offshore logistics, operations, marine environment, and we can also develop and operate complex and large-scale industrial projects in harsh environments, and obviously we can leverage on our global geographical outreach. Those features are obviously particularly useful for the new frontier, which is floating offshore wind. We think there is a huge opportunity to pursue offshore wind in South Korea, particularly, mainly for three reasons. First, a very pressing willingness to have clean power. In July 2020, the government announced its Green New Deal with strong ambitions to develop renewable energies, including 12 gigawatts of offshore wind by 2030. Second, South Korea has a tremendous potential with strong governmental support, unique set of local competencies, an extensive shipbuilding know-how, and country's ambitious R&D programs. And last, third main reason, we as Total Energies have a very strong historical presence in the country since 1985. As Korea's heavy industry in a long-established partner for our oil and gas projects. Most of our offshore project facilities are built or under construction at Korean shipyards, such as the Moro North project in Congo, which is a showcase for our floating deep offshore operating expertise, and a hub for cutting-edge technology where we worked with a fabrication yard in Ulsan. We are leveraging our expertise and our strong partnership with the Korean heavy industry to invest in offshore wind power projects in the country, seeking to cooperate with various industry sectors and tighten the existing bonds in Korea. We have been a pioneer in oil and gas by building our first complex floating platform in Ulsan, Girasol. It was in 1996, and since then we have been continuously present in South Korea and Ulsan in oil and gas projects for almost 30 years. And since then, Korea has become the first world-class player in oil and gas contractors. Today, similarly, we are here to be a stronger partner again for South Korea in its energy transition and ambition in renewable energies. We are convinced that our Korean development will be also the first stone to build the future hub for large wind farm EPCI in the region. And this takes me to the main topic of my presentation. How will we concretely contribute to the development of the offshore wind segment in South Korea? So I'm very proud to present you our floating offshore wind project, Bada Energy, that we will be developing with our partner GIG, Macquarie. We will develop a portfolio of 5 large floating offshore wind projects in South Korea with a potential cumulated capacity of more than 2 gigawatts. The portfolio will be located off the eastern and southern coast of the country, Ulsan and South Jeolla provinces, and we aim to launch execution of the first 500 megawatt Grey Well project in 2024. We are also extremely proud to have obtained our first EBL on one of our Grey Well projects, the first to be granted to a large-scale floating project in Korea. And I would like to thank the authorities for such a sign of trust and confidence given to our teams and our projects and the Ulsan municipality for their continuous support to the sustainable development of a major world-class floating offshore wind hub. During the whole duration of our Bada Energy project, we have several commitments. First, we are committed to revitalizing and positively impacting local economies, creating jobs and opportunities for skills development. Second, we are committed to collaborate and involve local stakeholders and reinforce the dialogue between stakeholders, such as fishermen, other developers, and authorities. And we are part with GAG of the Industry Academic Cooperation Program with the Ulsan Institute of Science and Technology and Bada Energy team with support from Total Energy's experts have delivered the first semester of a training master program which develops and shares local expertise in floating offshore wind and internship program. Then we are also committed to high environmental standards and systematically take the environment into account at every stage of the project. As a major player in the energy industry, we are aware of the environmental risks of our operations, and we make environmental issues an integral part of our strategy. We are committed to optimize the costs of renewable energy. Close collaboration between most experienced players of the supply chain and developers is the path towards optimized industrialization of the execution of our project. And it's very important because it leads finally to the cost of electricity. So it has to be affordable and competitive. And last but not least, we are committed to our timeline and to seek any opportunity to accelerate. With our electrical business license, the EBL, in-house for our first Grey Well project in Ulsan, we are now completing in advance of phase our geophysical survey to de-risk the coming engineering phase. Along with our partner, GAG, we have the firm commitment to contribute to the development of South Korea's offshore wind industry with a long-term view, sharing our common ambition for a low-carbon future. We strongly believe in the future of South Korea and the Ulsan region in the energy transition, which have all the capacities to become the future Asian hub for the offshore wind industry. We are proud to contribute to the development of floating offshore wind in South Korea, and particularly in Ulsan, and continue the long-standing collaboration between our company and the country, which has lasted over the last 30 years. Thank you again, Mayor Song Chul-ho, for this opportunity for Total Energies to participate in the forum, and many thanks to all of you.
네, 영상 보내주신 수석부사장님께 큰 박수 부탁드립니다.
Very much, Vice President at Total Energies, and he believes that Korea can be reborn as the hub of floating offshore wind technology in Asia. Thank you very much.
We will invite the fourth speaker from the KF Wind, Mr. Guzman Figar, the head of the business Asia Pacific, and please welcome him with a round of applause.
Okay. Major Song, dear participants, thank you for the invitation.
네, 시장님, 그리고 기타 참석자 여러분, 오늘 이렇게 함께 포럼에 하게 되어서 매우 영광으로 생각합니다.
Forum possible. It's a wonderful opportunity to be able to be here and explain to you a bit about that project and about what we're trying to do. Okay, my presentation we call Principles for Sustainability of an Offshore Project. And what does this mean? I think most of you have a good idea of what we are trying to build. And there will be several project presentations later to explain in detail our project. Okay. To explain our project in detail. But in this presentation, I wanted to explain to you how we want to build it. What are the principles that guide our decisions? So I prepared a long presentation, okay? There are several slides, but they told me today I only have 5 to 7 minutes to deliver this presentation. So I decided that rather than going very fast through the presentation, I will speak about this slide only. So I will focus on this slide, which is the 3 principles that guide our actions. Those principles are reduction of the cost of energy, localization and local job creation, and coexistence with local communities and fishermen. This slide, by the way, is the same slide I presented last year. We do not believe it is necessary to update the slide because our principles don't change. Our ambition is that these principles remain as they are or very similar during the lifetime of the project, and that I can come here and explain to you again what specific actions we are doing to honor these principles. Okay? So we have reduced the principles to 8 specific actions. Okay, the first is in relation to the reduction of cost of energy is the scale. Okay, I think we have all prepared our EBL applications. We have done the first modeling and we know where the electricity costs are. And we know and we have a duty to reduce the cost of energy. Okay, the costs are still high because this technology is very novel. Okay, there are only approximately 100 megawatt built. Then scale is the first opportunity to reduce the cost of energy. We will be building 6 gigawatt in Ulsan, and it will be the first large wind farm of this type in the world. The second important action to reduce the cost of energy is continuity. Okay? We are developing 6 gigawatt in Ulsan, but this cannot be a one-off. It's important that the supply chain and sees continuity to this project and that there are other projects in parts of Korea and in other parts of the world to follow up on what we are doing. And I think, well, most of the developers here are also active trying to develop other floating projects in other parts of Korea, which is great for the industry. And the third is cooperation amongst developers. We cannot build this project as 5 independent projects. We need to work together in developing this project, and the first opportunity we have to work together is the common grid. I think, and it will be raised, the common grid issue later during this session, but it's our first big opportunity to work together, and we need to learn how to work together. Okay? The second big principle is localization and job creation. Okay? The first thing that we did was to open our office in Ulsan. So our main office is in Ulsan. Already approximately 60 to 70% of our team is based in Ulsan, and we expect this percentage to grow in the future. The second is local content. I think this project will only happen if we can deliver a substantial part of the CapEx in Korea. So we are proactively reaching out to all the supply chain in Korea. We are also attending forums to get to know as much as possible the supply chain, and we have opened doors to any Korean supplier who is interested in meeting us and learning about the project. We're also talking to international suppliers, and when we talk to them, of course we talk about technology, of course we talk about prices, but the main topic of conversation is what is your local plan? What are you going to do in Korea? How are you going to deliver to us a product? Manufacturing in Korea. And then the sixth is not forget about the O&M. At this stage, we're always talking about construction, about CapEx, but the most important part of the job creation is done during the O&M phase. Okay? How we are working in other parts of the world is We build integrated O&M centers where our O&M team and our suppliers work together. They share the same office space, they share the same facility, and our plan is to build such an O&M center in Ulsan. We estimate that during the O&M phase, we will be employing directly approximately 150 people, okay, for a period of probably 25 years or longer if we can extend the project. And the third principle is coexistence with the local communities and with the fishermen. Okay, so we need to develop the project in a way that we minimize the impact. And it's a good opportunity to mention that floating wind energy is the generation technology with less impact. Why? It does not emit CO2 or nuclear waste. It does not occupy land. Land is terribly valuable in Korea, so we do not occupy land. We do not even occupy close sea space, okay? We have seen some nearshore projects, but at the end, the sea space close to the shore is very valuable, okay? Because there are a lot of economic activities and fishing, so we are very far away. Actually, we are almost in the border with the Sea of Japan. And then, of course, there is no visual impact. Our project cannot be seen, okay? And the last point, which is critical to any offshore project, is working together with the fishermen. We are working very closely with them. We are talking to them almost daily, but every week. We are meeting with them, and we are making together the key decisions affecting the project, okay? So I don't have time, unfortunately, to go deeper into what we are doing. I think the slides are there. But I hope to be able to come here next year and revert to you on what specific actions we are taking to deliver on these three principles. Okay? So thank you very much. Thank you for your attention, and it was a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much for your concise presentation. We'll take home the three principles you emphasized. 네, 좋은 발표 감사드립니다.
Thank you very much for your presentation, and now that brings us to the last presenter, Mr. Torsten Smatt from the CIP, Vice President from the CIP, and unfortunately he can't be here due to the COVID-19, and he sent the video instead.
첫 번째 발표를 함께 시청하시죠.
Thank you for inviting me to speak here at your conference about floating offshore wind. My name is Torsten Smatt, and I'm one of the founders of CIP, and I spend all of my time basically on working with offshore wind projects. We started CIP back in 2012 with a commitment from one investor of 1 billion euro, and we have since then grown the business to 16 billion euro, and we are engaged in energy projects all over the world today. We have around 100 LPs investing into our funds currently. We are investing both in traditional energy projects, but we are also working on some of the more exciting new technologies, such as floating offshore wind or Power-to-X projects. So we have just raising a new fund now, which will be investing into Power-to-X projects, which we expect to get to more than 2 billion euro. We are also focusing on the exciting new theme of energy islands, which may also be of relevance for South Korea at a later stage. We have, and our team have previously pioneered offshore wind in Europe before we started CIP. After we started CIP, we were engaged in some of the more difficult projects in Europe from a technical perspective. We are one of the first movers in offshore wind in Taiwan, where we are currently building the Xiangfang-Xidao project. We are also a first mover in offshore wind in the US, where we are a partner in the Vineyard Wind 800 megawatt project, which is the largest first large-scale offshore wind project in the US. So we are very excited about that. Offshore wind and floating offshore wind is expected to be a large part of the energy mix globally going forward. So by 2040, offshore wind is expected to account for approximately 430 gigawatt of project capacity And today, floating is expected to be around 70 gigawatt of that. And floating may become a larger part of that mix if we manage to build floating offshore wind projects in a more cost-efficient manner. Why floating offshore wind? Well, that's pretty obvious. That's because we do not have seabed enough, which is suitable for fixed bottom projects. And floating projects also has a number of other benefits. So, for example, the wind tends to be more stable, far from shore, and also people are basically not disturbed by the wind turbines when they are placed further away from shore. So, floating offshore wind is something which is expected to be very big going forward. CIP has a pipeline of around 30 gigawatts of offshore wind projects that we are working on. And out of that, 12 gigawatt is floating. And we have large ambitions in South Korea, also on floating. So in the Ulsan area, we are working on 3 projects called Haewon Offshore Wind 1, 2, and 3, which we expect to be 1.5 gigawatt in total. We have had flighters out in the water since Q3 2020, and we hope that we can take the projects to financial close, so start building them in the back end of 2024. And hopefully that will be done together with local partners in South Korea. We already have a strong team in place in South Korea, so we have 20 people now working solely on our offshore wind projects, and they are being led by Jesper Holst and David Yu, both very experienced within offshore wind. And Jesper brings a lot of experience from Europe, and we believe it's very effective basically to have European expats here in South Korea, basically to learn to our South Korean colleagues how to build offshore wind in a good fashion. We are working on some early stage projects in Scotland, in Europe, where we expect to do a demo project very soon, and we expect to build a small scale commercial project also quite soon called Pentland, 100 megawatt. And from that we will get a lot of experience which we expect to deploy for our projects in Ulsan later on. And generally speaking, South Korea and Ulsan are very well positioned to become a leading floating offshore wind nation in Asia. You already have some of the strongest suppliers within offshore wind already present in South Korea. I could just mention CS Wind, Samkang, and also LS Cable. So you have a really good position. And if you want to take advantage of that within the floating offshore wind space, you need to make sure that you get the industry up and running very fast. And the ways you can do that is to make sure that there are a clear regulatory framework in South Korea for building floating offshore wind. You need to make sure that there's the right subsidy level for the projects, because the first projects will be more expensive than the later projects, so they would need more supply. And in addition to that, you need to make sure that you basically mature the supply chain and you build out grid and harbor facilities to make the industry come up and running. But you are in a really, really favorable position, and we are keen basically to help you to get a first mover advantage in the floating offshore wind space. So thank you for your time and attention.
네, 여러분 다시 한번 큰 박수 부탁드립니다.
Please give him a round of applause, because he mentioned that the first effort is very important, because the first stage is quite important. That's what he mentioned. And we have heard 5 presentations so far, and next we will hear from the Director Moon Yang-taek from Ministry of Trade, Energy and Industry. He will talk about the policy directions as well as the current trend of Korea's offshore wind technology. Please welcome him with a round of applause.
Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening. I am Moon Yang-taeg, Director at the Renewable Energy Deployment Division of the Ministry of Trade, Industry, and Energy. And my talk today is about the direction of the policy of our ministry about the floating offshore wind farm. This is the content of my presentation. So the first one is forecast on current status of the floating offshore wind farm and some challenges and current progress and future direction. The first is the current status and prospects for the offshore wind farm. And listening to the presentations in the first sessions, I could see many of the contents overlap with one another, and as of 2020, globally, installed capacity is 35.3 gigawatts, particularly in the UK, Germany, and European countries, and also in China. And floating offshore wind energy, the installed capacity is 73 megawatts, particularly in the European countries. And according to a recent report, by 2030, it is expected to have 16.5 gigawatts in European countries, mainly. And the map you see on the slide shows the current status of projects related to the offshore wind energy, and currently 142 megawatts is in operation, and commercial operation is 124 megawatts, and unfortunately there's no difference compared to last year, and we only have 3 places currently in operation, but we are expecting to see many more in many other places, and currently 43 places got the license amounting to 9.6 gigawatts, and I assume many of you know too well, 82 gigawatts for Shinan and Jeollanam-do province, and 2.4 gigawatts for Jeollabuk-do province, and 6.0 gigawatts for Ulsan area. So according to, in accordance with the Renewable Energy 3020 target, the government announced that it's gonna establish 12 gigawatts of offshore wind energy wind farm. And I believe the target should be upgraded a little bit considering the new 2050 carbon neutrality target. And these are main challenges for the offshore wind farm. And well, you know all of this well, but I think starting from the very start of the project, licensing and communication with the community, there are various points for challenges and obstacles, and that contributes to the elongated business period. And there are many stakeholders involved, so it's impossible for one organization to have all the information. So it's really important who you meet, who you are involved with. And there's also a big problem of community, fishing community. So it's the matter of life and death for them. So you have to talk to them, you have to have discussions. And there's no standardized form of certain guidelines that you can follow along with the process. So far, the government has announced various policies regarding the offshore projects. So in 2017, Renewable Energy 3020, and 2019, some plans to strengthen the competitiveness, and in 2020, 5th Renewable Energy Basic Plan, most importantly, and also in offshore wind. So they're looking at 16.5 gigawatts by 2030, including offshore and onshore wind energy. And they are, or as I mentioned, they are upgrading this target. And there's a 22.2% powered by renewable energy by 2034. So I think they have to put forward in their energy target by 2030. Next is the government actions in improving some of the systems or institutions. The first one is the system improvement. The first one is improvement in RC rate. And they also introduced the preliminary announcement or notification service. So they upgraded this weighted system from 2.0 to 2.5. And they set different targets for different renewable energies. And as I said, the previous 2.0 was upgraded to 2.5 for offshore wind. And they also added the water depth, which wasn't existent before. So the deeper the water, the more weighted scores. And the second one is the RSC weighted scores were to be confirmed after the completion of the project. So this worked as a barrier for most of the companies because they had some problems in procuring project financing. So they changed it so that they can have, in the early stage of their project, what their weighted scores could be. And for the offshore wind projects larger than 100 megawatts, they now get to have a unified impact assessment. Previously, they had to get both of the impact assessments, but they only now have to get one impact assessment. So this is standardized and unified depending on the capacity from 0 to 50 megawatts. They only have to talk about the consultation of using the water areas, and for 50 to 100 megawatts, they have to talk about impact assessment. And for wetland reservation or preservation, related laws and regulations were changed so that the cables can pass the wetland area. And for acceptance by the fishing community, in order to improve the acceptance level of the fishing community, we certainly have some laws and regulations. And for offshore wind farms, considering its unique nature, there were some revision in the enforcement regulation and enforcement decree in deciding the area of neighboring region. And in case you have to go through many meetings and consultations of different organizations, now you have some standards in how to, in what amount you can have out of the subsidies and grants. And I believe this will work as a guideline in distributing some grants and subsidies, especially it involves many communities and organizations. So in order to improve the acceptance level, the government strengthened the process of communicating, especially hearing opinions. And before, we didn't have any regulations regarding this. So, there were these cases where people don't know anything about what is going to happen in their area. So now the companies and organizations that have to notify, they have to notify and make an announcement that this project is going to happen in your area before they go on with the project. And we also introduce the collective area, intense area. And for the project larger than 40 megawatts, then the local governments usually lead this project, but government use the weighted score of REC up to 0.1. So the government has been focusing on offshore wind projects for the last 3 years, and despite many things done by the government, there's still lots of things to be improved. And we don't have any project that was initiated this year, the new project that started this year. So I think we still need more time to see some results, some tangible results. So the government needs to accelerate the project. And the government has been thinking a lot of ways to improve or accelerate this project. And this is about enacting some special acts on the offshore wind energy. And part of this bill is introduced here and there. And the core of this bill is one-stop shop introduction. So it used to take 5 to 6 years previously, to do the project, but the time can be accelerated according to a new bill. So the government will identify the possible areas, and they also plan to unify the procedure for licensing and permitting and approval and everything. So currently, it will go through the deliberation of the Standing Committee at the National Assembly, and we hope to see the enactment very shortly. So for the acceleration of the project, which is the key elements of the revision or enactment, so previously, you have to identify the water areas and get the license, of course, and do the basic designing and everything. And you have to talk with the ministries, relevant ministries, to discuss environmental impact assessment and licenses and approval. So it takes about 18 months. Maximum 18 months. But along the way, in total 68 months to do the project. But along the way, you get faced with many challenges and issues and problems. So the proposed way is that government takes the lead in identifying the waters and designating some areas for development and helping elevate the acceptance level among the fishing communities and selecting the companies and operators, and as well as the accelerated process of permitting and approval and licensing. So if the process is initiated and done by the government mostly, the procedure will be accelerated largely. And in August this year, a guideline was distributed, and renewable energy project larger than 40 megawatts, and if it's done by the local government, for example, including the identifying areas and taking care of other procedures, then the incentive will be given by the central government in the form of 0.1 weighted REC. So they look at whether this local government is capable of doing all this, And is it possible for the selected area to be developed in a stable manner? And the REC 0.1 is able to be returned in the form of benefits that will be distributed to the community. So this REC weighted incentive will be confirmed shortly by through the relevant procedures initiated and led by the government. So I said the weighted REC will be 0.1 maximum. So when you secure the acceptance, fully secure the acceptance, then the rated level is 0.04. And if you identify the waters, then 0.02. And if you have plans for recruiting operators, then 0.01. And for the different project period, 0.01 to 0.03 weighted REC will be given. So the total amount will be 0.10. And the government has been planning on many measures to improve the acceptance level among the community, the fishing community. So they plan to distribute the guideline to promote the acceptance level among the fishing community. So this has been emphasized time and time again in the previous projects, but it always has created some issues so far. How the fishing community or the resident community hasn't been fully involved in the project. So the government decided to have some central guideline, believing that it's not really effective to leave everything to the hands of the local government or the private businesses. So the guideline will have some recommendations to strengthen the acceptance level. The next one is consulting. Most of the projects where more than 2% or up to 4% of the project is done by the participation of the people, then the REC is given. Certain points of REC is given to the project, but there were some demands regarding some guidelines, central guidelines that can help promote the participation of the residents. So a relevant guideline will also be published. Next is consulting about the areas, the water areas. So when operators or potential operators apply for the water areas for their project, then the ministry and other relevant organizations may provide some consulting for effective process of the project. And next is regarding strengthening the competitive edge. So the competitive edge ultimately comes from how many jobs it can create, how much economic benefits the project can create. So ultimately it all comes down to those factors. So in order to improve such benefits, we are planning to build joint connection facilities. So Ulsan is going to see a 6.0 gigawatts project. And if all the companies have to utilize individual connecting facilities, then it will be a war over a rare resource. So the government is planning to build a joint connection facilities for all the companies and project operators to utilize. And I believe we're going to see some results in Ulsan very shortly. And the second one is a comprehensive support system for the floating offshore wind farms. And hinterland is really important. And we already announced a plan for local government proposals. And we're also planning to build a center for the one-stop center for the floating offshore. And they also planning to recruit some ideas from the local governments to secure more yards for the project. And we're also going ahead with the R&D project, R&D support project. And we're trying to develop a large-size wind turbine that is appropriate for the environment of Korea. And we also support many R&D projects for floating wind energy system and transportation, installation, dynamic cables, digital twin, and all the other technologies required for the project. And since this is a large project, project financing is really important. It's a crucial element, actually. And project financing is crucial for the stable operation of the project, and it is directly linked with how much profit it can create. But the thing is that the stable price is not being proposed right now. So the government is planning to improve the wind energy pricing system, which is not easy to do. Big homework for the government, and I hope to see some results very shortly. So in closing, considering all the things that were reviewed in this presentation, the key is that local governments and of course central government should play a central role. And in going ahead with the project, the voice of the fishing community should be heard more loudly, which is very important, and it should be considered all through the project. And of course, at the center, the government initiatives is important. Thank you very much for the presentation, and thank you. You had to come all the way to Ulsan City, but it was a beautiful presentation discussing the roadmap of Korean government regarding the future of energy. So we're going to have a 5-minute break and move on to the next session. I hope to see you in the next session.
머나먼 태평양에서 불어오는 바람이 잠시 쉬어가는 길목. 깊고 푸른 동해바다에서 울산으로 더 큰 바람이 불어옵니다. 이제 울산이 깨끗하고 푸른 친환경 에너지를 만들어갑니다. 울산 부유식 해상풍력. 바람에 날개를 달다.
울산으로부터 58km 떨어진 동해바다. 연중 강한 바람이 부는 드넓은 대륙붕에 세계 최대 부유식 해상풍력 발전단지가 들어옵니다. 울산, 부산, 경남의 모든 가구가 사용해도 남는 전력을 만들고 연간 930만 톤의 이산화탄소를 줄여 탄소 중립의 꿈에 한 발 더 다가서는 바다 위의 청정발전소. 울산 부유식 해상풍력. 지구를 위한 좋은 바람을 만들다.
전세기를 누렸던 울산의 조선과 해양 플랜트 기술. 이제 동해 바람을 만나 다시 한번 바다의 꿈을 펼칩니다. 울산이 만들어가는 도전의 역사가, 융합의 기술이 친환경 에너지 강국을 만들어갑니다. 울산 부유식 해상 풍력, 기술로 앞서가는 최고의 바람을 만나다.
아무도 울산의 성공을 의심하지 않는다. 지금도 울산의 성공에 찬사를 보낸다. 조국의 미래를 열었다고, 역사를 써왔다고, 이룰 건 다 이뤘다고. 과연 그럴까? 지금이 진짜 우리의 전성기일까? 지금이 가장 위대한 울산일까? 천년을 이어온 국제도시 울산. 산의 기세와 역동하는 바다가 만나는 도시 울산. 이 범상치 않은 땅에 써온 울산의 역사. 우리가 아는 울산보다 더 큰 울산이 있다. 우리가 꿈꾼 미래보다 더 큰 미래가 온다. 바다와 바람으로 만드는 에너지, 쓸수록 깨끗한 도시를 만드는 수소에너지. 동부가 에너지 중심 도시 울산. 원전 해체 산업을 리드하고 울산의 힘으로 한국의 미래를 열어가는 울산 경제 자유구역과 5대 특구로 성장하는 울산. 더 건강한 울산을 위해 새로운 분야의 리더가 되기 위해 준비하는 첨단 의료 산업 기반. 더 편리하고 깨끗한 선진 교통망. 자연과 공존하는 태화강 국가 정원. 역사와 문화의 가치를 지켜나가는 울산. 이미 시작된 미래. 우리가 기다리는 울산. 울산의 미래로 가는 9개의 성장 다리.
We've been busy over the last 12 months. Take a deep breath. Green Investment Group, accelerating the green transition.
Energy is life. We all need it. and it's a source of progress. So today, to contribute to the sustainable development of the planet facing the climate challenge, we are moving forward together.
네, 협조해 주셔서 감사합니다. 바로 저희 투자사 프로젝트 발표를 시작하도록
Then we will start the presentation of 5 investing firms. Please proceed to the hall and take your seats.
네, 곧 다음 세션을 시작할
We'll begin our next session shortly. Please take your seat.
start. I would like to kindly ask you all to be seated. 네, 그럼 지금부터 다섯
Now we will begin the presentations of 5 investing firms and petrochemical projects. Our first presentation will be made by Representative Director Ju Young-gyu from Munmu Baram. Please welcome him with a round of applause. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ju Young-gyu, Representative Director from Munmu Baram. I'm very glad and happy to be given this opportunity to make a presentation on our project. And since the last international forum, and we will what kind of operations and projects we have been doing. That's what I will going to tell you through today's presentation, as well as our future plan. And our Shell and Joint Hexagon made a joint agreement in 2019, but at the end of August, Shell became the official stakeholder, and we made joint venture called Munmu Baram. And Shell has 80% of shares, and Coins Hexagon has 20% of shares. And so many people are curious about the title of our project, Munmu Baram. So let me explain why we made the name Munmu Baram. As you may well know, Munmu is the name of the King Munmu during the Silla dynasty, and Baram means wind in Korean. And also, Baram has 2 different meanings in Korean. One is wish and second is wind. So the King Munmu, when he died, he submerged into Daewang-am, and he said he would be a dragon to protect the country. So successing the concept, we would like to project and contribute to the development of this region as well as our country through this project. That's why we have made the title as Munmu Baram. In Korea, currently we have 20 team members in Korea for doing this project. And in India, London, and Houston, and Hague, so there are so many engineers working on our project. There are around 50 employees. And currently, in Korea, we have people working on licensing and safety and onshore and offshore projects. And overseas, they are in charge of purchasing and geophysics and feasibility studies and licensing. So we are working domestically and abroad. As you may well know, Munmu Baram project is located in the far southeastern part of Korea, and it started. We have been operating F-LiDAR for measuring wind condition. And on September 6th, we completed our application, and in October, we are planning to complete the measuring wind condition. Once it is completed in November, N5 and N6 licensing will be applied as well. And furthermore, environmental assessment evaluation as well as other licensing related work will be carried out. We have actually made a contract with Doha developer. Furthermore, from the perspective of engineering, we started survey on the seabed. We actually completed it in the early September. And geophysics as well as geotechnical survey will be carried out. For example, on depth in soils and debris infrastructure. And we actually categorized into two different concepts, and including for floater design and others. Those are very basic work. And on September 28th, we completed these two surveys, and our engineers firstly told me that in Eastern Sea, he just described it as a mashed pancake. That means our seabed area is very complex, and what we have to consider for designing it, we could actually confirm through the surveys and with the materials that we have obtained. Once we completed our surveys, we will move on to the engineering phase. Based on the seabed surveys, we are working on the floater selecting processes. And in accordance with the procedures, and last February we started our work on this. Total 23 companies. EPC, we received the proposals from 23 companies. We will deeply examine all of those documents, and we selected 4 different technologies, and from November we will carry out for the next 6 months, we will work on the pre-seed development. Once we select our technologies, then maybe in the middle of next year we will work on the detailed designing process and complete the EPC contract as well. According to our current plan, and our final decision will be made by 2024, and our opening timing will be 2027. That's our target. And we made 4 different packages. We categorize it into 4 different packages what we want to purchase. The first one is wind turbine generators, and the second package is floaters and mooring lines, and third one is offshore substation and export cables, and fourth one is onshore substation and related works. And I told you our third package will be offshore substation and export cables, and the fourth one will include onshore substation and related works. Previously, Director Moon Yang-tae explained ways for joint access, and our Mumubaram project will be in line with the guidelines of government and Korean Electricity Company. And we already made conclusion and agreement with other developers locally. And when we made the licensing application, and the joint application was very basic part. In Mumubaram project will contribute to Ulsan's development so that this region will be the center of the floating offshore. And actually a lot of people have told that Ulsan region is very suitable for this project. When it comes to floating offshore, people say it's quite simple structure. It has quite simple structure, but in Korea, the scale of megawatt and gigawatt, if Korea can achieve megawatt and gigawatt the scale of offshore floating offshore model, then we can create a new business model. And I believe that Mumubaram project will contribute to the industrialization of this floating offshore wind technologies. Not only shipyards, but also all suppliers, domestic suppliers, will join our project. As I told you previously, floaters and designing and incubators will be the one part when we make a contract for EPC, but with so many local suppliers and through qualification processes, so many local suppliers will participate in our contract. That's what we have been working very hard so far. And we'd like to make mutual prosperity with local communities. Our company, Shell, is a good member of our society and have been doing a lot of activities in improving environment. When we developed Mumubaram project, we were very transparent to make it open, to make Mumubaram project open. Furthermore, the floating offshore wind technology will be utilized by the fisheries communities as well as in the renewable energy project. So far, we have been working very hard for the past year, but I still believe that we have a long way to go on for the 5th and 6th phases of our project. And we will definitely make full cooperation with our co-developers so that this floating offshore wind project will be a great success. Thank you for your attention. Thank you very much, Representative Director Chu Young-gyu. And I hope you can complete your project successfully, as you have mentioned.
Next, we'll invite Deputy Project Director Park Do-hyun from Equinor, South Korea, and he will talk about a project called Firefly, which is a floating offshore wind project. Thank you for the introduction. I am Do-hyun Park, Deputy Project Director of Equinor, South Korea. And it's my honor and delight to stand here as a speaker. So these are the contents of my presentation, 3 pillars. The first one is to briefly talk about a floating offshore wind project called Firefly in Ulsan. And next is floater model that is the most appropriate for the Korean nature condition. And thirdly is a bird's eye view or drawing plan for the Firefly project. So this is the overview of the project. The title of the project is Ulsan Firefly Floating Offshore Wind Project. And it's 12 megawatt project, and it uses the horizontal wind turbine. And the total capacity is 804 megawatts. And we're considering 800 meters of the floater line and the total numbers of the floaters. The required area for the project is 154 square kilometers of public waters area. And the cables needed for the project will use 230 kilovolts of alternate currents, and the transmitting volt is 345. The purpose of the project is to keep up with the policy of renewable energy 3020, and also to support the energy shift toward the renewable energy, and also to utilize the supply channel of the shipmaking and marine plant in Ulsan. And along with Jeju Island, we see Ulsan as the most fit area with its ample natural resources. So through the project, we aim to contribute to the local economy. Next is the future plan, and as you know, we already completed installation of the climate meteorological measurement system in Donghae area, and we are planning to obtain the EBL in November or December this year, and we're also preparing for the environmental impact assessment study, and with an aim of assessing 14 items for the impact study. We are going ahead with our project, and we also plan to commission the initial commissioning of the system in 2025, and the construction completion will be in 2027, and with the commercial operation in mind. The location of the project is the public waters 60 or 70 kilometers to the east of Ulsan Port, and it's located in the eastern part of the Korean Peninsula. And on the right table, you are seeing some projects completed and in operation by Equinor. And the first one is mentioned by our president in the first session. It reached 57.1% of the capacity operation in average. And it also exceeds the average capacity utilization rate of 35%. And it's assessed to be a success. I just mentioned the High Wind project and the Arkona project. And other large-size projects are in operation in other areas too, including the North Sea of the UK. And next is the floater model that we are developing that is most appropriate for the Korean condition. And if you look at the slide here, you can see semi-submersible composing 3 columns, and it's called pontoon, radiative pontoon. And the turbine, the wind turbine, is put on 1 column compared to the previous models, and it's more economical and it's more effective because it's passive ballast type, and it is also very more resistant to the storms and typhoon. And it is also appropriate for a quick mass production because it skips or excludes most of the unnecessary parts. So this is the current status of the floater development. We started developing the model in 2018 and reviewed more than the existing models, 20 existing models. And with the collaboration of the design company, we selected 4 models of floaters for the deeper consideration. And in 2020, we utilized the Moss Maritime data and completed the analysis simulation. And as of 2021, we are trying to select the company for the pre-feed and front-end engineering design, and we're looking at 2020 as a completion year. This is the bird's eye view for the Ulsan Firefly project, which is the floating offshore wind farm. And unlike the previous jacket assembly type, this new approach reduces the time and the processes and procedures for the assembly of the facilities. So in assembling blades and floaters and everything, it takes less time and efforts. And this shows how the floaters are loaded. So it uses buoy to make it floating. So as you can see how the floaters are transported from offshore, and it is resistant to the climate change and the weather change. So in constructing and completing the construction doesn't really require much hassle. And you can see the white line and yellow lines, which each of which represent the floater line and the connectors. So in closing my presentation, I'd like to thank all the stakeholders involved in our project and other companies, GIG, Total Energies, Shell Korea. And I think we are sharing our know-hows and not as cooperating, not as a competitors. And in hoping that our project will be a great success and establishing a modular example for Ulsan and other areas. Thank you very much for your presentation. Yes, the presentation was really informative, and I could already visualize the completed project. And next, we'll invite the third speaker.
And we will have Joint Representative Director Choi Woo-jin from GIG Total Energies. And he will let us know about the Ulsan Gray Whale project. Good afternoon. I am Woo-jin Choi, who is acting as a Joint Representative Director of Joint Ventures of GIG and Total Energies. First of all, I would like to thank the honorable people from Ulsan city government and relevant officials. Before I begin my presentation, let me briefly introduce GIG and Total Energies, co-developers of the project. GIG is originated from Green Investment Bank, established by the UK government in 2012 as the first green bank in the world. After privatization in 2017, GIG's main mission is to supply and expand renewable energy all over the world for decarbonization. UK is known to be the leading country in terms of offshore wind, and GIG has invested more than 50% of offshore wind projects in the UK. As GIG has shown in various cases in the UK, through offshore wind project, GIG is working on creating local jobs and fostering talents locally to build and operate the offshore wind project for its lifetime cycle. Total Energies, formerly known as Total, which is one of the 5 major energy companies, is going to proactively contribute to the global effort to reach carbon neutrality. And Total Energy is targeting to reach net zero by 2050. And as a first step, Total Energy is planning to invest in more than 100 gigawatt renewables by 2030. Especially, Total Energies is deeply connected with Korean shipyards, and Total Energies has been collaborating with Korean shipyards and local suppliers for a very long time, so it has a good understanding on the Korean market. The total amount of contract our company has awarded to Korea's shipyards are more than 42 trillion Korean won. When it comes to constructing and operating floating offshore wind projects, Korean shipyards, relevant industries, and local suppliers play important roles. So Total Energies' understanding on Korean shipyard will serve as a stepping stone for the successful collaboration. We are pursuing around 2.5 gigawatt size of offshore wind projects in South Korea. In Ulsan, we are targeting 1.5 gigawatt, and in South Jeolla region, 1 gigawatt. Estimated total investment will be 17.5 trillion Korean won for the 2 projects in Ulsan and South Jeolla. Once the licensing is completed, we are planning to procure debt financing mostly from Korean financial institutions and Korean pensions. As planned, if the 2.5 gigawatt size of project begins construction and operation, we expect about 36,570 jobs will be created. And in terms of Ulsan's floating offshore wind project, we are targeting to finalize the development of the first phase of the project by the end of 2023, if things goes as planned. As the project development is progressed, we are planning to expand our collaboration further with Korean companies and Korean institutions. First of all, we'd like to invite Korean companies as our shareholders in the near future for joint development, through which knowledge transfer and resource collaboration between GIG Total and Korean companies can be actively made. This will also accelerate the localization of our project. Also, it is important to find and support local supply chains, which will perform important part of the construction and operation for the project. In this context, we signed an MOU with Local Supply Chain Committee for localization 1 month ago. And it is also important to collaborate with universities to train necessary human resources who will do significant roles during the lifetime cycle of the offshore wind project. So that's why we signed an MOU with UNIST, and we are going to expand our collaboration with local universities. Through these efforts, we would like to facilitate Korean and local companies to have many chances to participate during construction and operation stages in relation to providing manufacturing and fabrication, installation, operation, and maintenance. Our key mission will be to make one team between our project and local economy. In the international waters 60 kilometers away from Ulsan, we're developing 1.5 gigawatt floating offshore wind farm, and once it is completed as planned, this will be one of the largest floating offshore wind farms in the world. In July 2021, for the first time, for the floating offshore wind, we obtained an electricity business license from the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy. And as of today, we are preparing for the following permitting and consenting processes. We're hoping to be able to finalize detailed design and permitting process for the first phase of the project by 2023. Once 1.5 gigawatt size of floating offshore wind commences operation, it will produce electricity for 1.6 million households. In terms of carbon reduction effect, it's likely planting 30-year-old pine trees in the area, which is 3.6 times bigger than Seoul metropolitan city. If we cannot make proper responses to RE100 or carbon border adjustment mechanism in a swift manner, Korean economy may suffer greatly since Korea heavily relies on export. In this context, once our project is successfully completed, we will be able to contribute to building global competitiveness for Korean companies. Let me briefly introduce local training plan. We signed an MOU with UNIST in December 2020 for training human resources for floating offshore wind sector. Based on this collaboration MOU, we gave lectures to UNIST graduate students on floating offshore wind-related technologies and also run scholarship and internship programs. Going forward, we are going further expand our collaboration with local universities and institutions. Now let me introduce local supply chain. As you are well aware, Ulsan has world-class shipyards and offshore plant industries, as well as skilled laborers. That's why we're planning to establish overall supply chain in Ulsan to support Ulsan to become floating offshore wind cluster. I think in this way we can make contributions. Once the floating offshore wind cluster is established, it will be able to accumulate experiences and knowledge on design, fabrication, installation, operation and maintenance on turbine, blade, tower, floater, subsea cable, offshore and onshore substation. Through this experience, I believe Ulsan will be able to make a leap forward as an outpost for export in relation to floating offshore wind market. To this end, we've made humble first step forward. Last month, we signed MOUs with Ulsan City Government, UNIST, shipyards in Ulsan, and Ulsan Supply Chain Committee, and we're going to start discussions for establishing local supply chain and localization of the components of the floating offshore wind farm in a more detailed fashion. Floating offshore wind is the effective means to respond to global climate crisis, and also it will bring lots of quality jobs in the region. We hope to be able to progress our project as planned and facilitate Ulsan City to become the global hub of floating offshore wind market. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you for your attention. Thank you very much for your wonderful presentation. And you mentioned about one team between business and local economy. I think it's very important factor. And let's move to the next presentation.
We have Technical Director Oyvind Larsen from KfW. Let us welcome him with a round of applause.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Øyvind Larsen. I am the Technical Director of Korea Floating Wind. Thank you for inviting us to this event. I think it's an excellent opportunity to share ideas and collaborate. What I want to do today is to give you an overview of our project. I'd like to share some achievements, some challenges, and finally I'd like to share our timeline for the project. And just to capture the essence of why we're here, the Ulsan Floating Offshore Development Project is a very large project development, full of cutting-edge offshore floating technology, and most importantly, it's now becoming real. We're quickly moving from a project development phase into a more tangible project design, engineering, and procurement phase. And I think I can share the excitement that I have by saying, what a great time to be an engineer. The infrastructure above the sea level is impressive. Large-scale floating wind farms are impressive above sea level, and equally impressive below the sea level. Large-scale infrastructure to be placed below the sea level. And just to remind us of size, what we're looking at here is our wind turbine and floater superimposed into a football stadium, and with 100-meter wide, it really fills the stadium. And the thing is, together as developers for this project alone, we will be building similar structures, and we will be building several hundreds of them. So we think that big is beautiful. Of course we do. Well, while big is beautiful, we must also respect proven technology. And in our portfolio, in Ocean Wind's portfolio today, we have 10-megawatt wind turbines and floaters in operation. That's our baseline. Moving forward, for this particular project, we're looking at 15, 16-megawatt wind turbines. And qualification is currently ongoing with the wind turbine suppliers. And beyond that, of course, as an industry, we're looking at 18, 20, 22-megawatt wind turbines. But from a Korea floating wind perspective, we're looking to achieve the right balance between size, as big as possible, and proven technology, and we cannot compromise on that. So with size comes certain project challenges. Management and logistics of a large international supply chain, complex contracting strategies, complex technical interfaces, novel products and technology. I mentioned the larger wind turbines, a complex design of floating and mooring system, a floating offshore substation, which has never been delivered as a product before, and associated with that, a dynamic export cable, which is currently undergoing technology qualification at the big cable suppliers internationally. And so there are many moving parts and equipment in a project like this. And on our part, in our project alone, 75 wind turbines. That represents 25 kilometers of wind turbine blades, if you line them up after each other. With 75 floaters, that represents 300,000 tons of steel. The largest FPSO in the world, by comparison, is 150,000 tons lightweight. Mooring chains, 150 kilometers. That is from Ulsan to Busan and back again with one continuous mooring chain. And these are large chains. 170 kilometers of inter-array cables, 200 kilometers of export cable, and floating offshore substations, 2 of them, some 7,000 tons each. And all of this needs to be integrated and then installed offshore. Complex operation, complex project. So just going through some of the project achievements from Korea Floating Wind. To begin with, just to remind ourselves about the Korean Floating Wind Consortium, Ocean Winds, a global joint venture between ENGIE and EDPR, 1,500 megawatts of wind turbines in operation, 4,000 megawatts of wind power in advanced development, and of course Ocean Winds are are the pioneers behind the wind flow technology. Aker Offshore Wind is a developer specializing in deep water assets. Some 1,500 megawatt portfolio in development. And of course, being part of the Aker Group, we bring to the table 175 years of experience from the maritime and offshore industries. So together, we complement each other. And I have to mention Kumyang Electric, which is an Ulsan-based company dedicated to electrical engineering and renewables, and which has experience from large-scale electrical EPC contracts in 9 countries. And together, we complement each other and have developed an excellent team. This is the overview of our project team. We will be 18 full-time resources by the end of 2021. We have currently 8 people in Ulsan, 6 in Seoul, and 4 internationals resources by the end of January next year. In July this year, we opened a new office in Ulsan, and of course, this comes on top of the effort from our sponsors in locations in Madrid, Spain, Oslo, Norway, and Houston, USA. We're moving forward with site characterization and permitting. We've collected 12 months of LiDAR data with 98% availability and no incidents. We've completed a geophysical and geotechnical desktop study. One of our concerns is the area to the northeast where there's increasingly large water depths and potentially steep slopes. And we're launching a geophysical reconnaissance survey as soon as we can. We've launched the military impact study, socioeconomic study. We're finalizing procurement for the environmental impact assessment and the navigation safety impact assessment. And next week, we'll be submitting our first part of the EBL application. On the technical side, we have completed technical studies for the 10 megawatt wind turbine project. We've completed technical studies for a 16 megawatt wind turbine project. We have launched the Korea-specific design of a floater from Principal Power, PPI. And of course, we will be using the wind flow technology, which is proven project and finance track record. And we're working with the other developers and KEPCO to try and find a cable route to shore. On procurement, we have completed an initial supplier engagement. We've met the national and international banks, and there's very strong interest in our project. We will be receiving quotations for the project from our suppliers in 2022 and also launch our FEED studies. With partners and stakeholders, we're intensifying the collaboration with the Fishermen Committee recognized by Ulsan Metropolitan City. We're working closely with Ulsan City Government on supply chain local engagement. The visit of President Moon to Ulsan and the meeting of Ocean Winds with President Moon in Madrid in Spain, we can confirm that we're fully aligned with the President's vision about renewable energy playing a central role in Korea's future energy mix. We're intensifying the work with the Korean universities, Korea Maritime and Oceans University, Kookmin University, UNIST, and we will strengthen our collaboration with the local universities to strengthen the development of the future generation workforce. And as next steps, we will discuss with the Ulsan Chamber of Commerce to host the first Ulsan Floating Offshore Wind Projects Association. And at project level, I'd like to summarize 5 challenges, which I think some of them is something that we share as developers. We need to sort out the grid internet connection. We need to define the routes to shore. We need to analyze and understand the grid capacity. And we need a timeline for when the grid capacity is available. On technical and procurement, we've talked about size versus proven technology. It's going to be a dilemma. Supply chain capacity will be a dilemma. Technical immaturity will be a dilemma. With regards to regulatory framework, this is evolving fast. What we as developers are looking for is standard certification and classification processes which are transparent and in line with international standards. We need to sort out environmental permitting. And of course, we need to find a way to coexist, cooperate, and collaborate with those that do fishing activities. On cost reduction, it's becoming a supplier's market out there. There are supply chain constraints, very real. The steel price is up by 30% over the last few months. Oil and gas market is coming back. These are real concerns for our project. And of course, it takes time to develop economies of scale. We need to industrialize the supply chain, and we need to industrialize the project execution of our project. And then finally, on operation and maintenance, infrastructure and performance responsibility, we need to look at yard locations, port locations, and we need to establish performance standards on operational services. And just to summarize, here is our timeline. We are on track with the electricity business license. We are on track, we believe, with the environmental and the permitting process. Engineering and procurement activities are going well, and we believe that we will find a way with the grid interconnection. All of that sets us on target to achieve final investment decision in 2024 and first generation of power in 2026. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Director Larson, for your very interesting and informative explanation on your project scope and details. 네, 상세한 발표 정말 재미있게 잘 들었습니다. 다음
Thank you very much for the presentation, and we'll invite the next speaker from COP Korea, President Yoo Tae-sung.
여러분, 큰 박수로
Please welcome him with a round of applause. Good afternoon, everyone. I am directing the Korean project. I'm a co-CEO, Yoo Tae-sung of CIP. And this is the third international forum on floating offshore wind forum. And let me extend my congratulations. And through today's presentation, I will talk about the progress of Haeuri floating offshore wind project of CIP, and as well as future plan. As you can see from the slide, this is the content and order of my presentation. First, I'll touch upon the current status of the CIP's global offshore wind floating offshore wind project, and the second, the roadmap for the process, and third, the current progress of Ulsan's floating offshore wind project, and our strategies as well as future effect. Currently, CIP is working on 14 countries in 4 different continents with offshore wind, and about 30 gigawatt scale of offshore wind pipeline. That's what we have, and half of which is a floating style. In case of floating, offshore wind is a future of offshore wind. That's why we want to secure our position as an early mover. In centering around Scotland, we are focusing on European market, and we are also working in the North American region, centering around the US, and Asian market, centering around Korea. We are pushing our businesses like this. And Korean market is, of course, the major market that we are focusing on for the floating offshore wind technology. Especially floating offshore wind project needs deep depth of water and far distance. And in Korea, we have to also think about the uniqueness of Korean environment and status of grid. And Korean government is working towards the hydrogen economy. That's why floating offshore wind is important. So in Denmark, CIP is working for the first time in the world this project. I think this is a requirement, not an option. So not only in Denmark, but also in Korea, energy island can be considered as a very important business. In Korea, especially in Ulsan area, for the success of floating offshore wind project, we are doing this work. And 500 megawatt of scale is being proceeded in Ulsan. Globally, 500 megawatt scale floating offshore wind is unprecedented globally. That's why we have a lot of potential risk. And securing the commercial way can be a very sensitive topic. That's why we have to figure out what kind of potential risk it has to address as much as possible. And in order to secure its commercial goal, we have to make a thorough plan. That's why before we start with the Heori project, we are making preliminary one. In Scotland, we have a pre-commercial 100 megawatt scale project as well as petland demonstration. And through these two projects, we accumulated our know-hows and experience, which will be applied to Ulsan's floating offshore wind project so that we can make it a great success. And that's our commitment. On the left part of the slide, this is the concept of our choice. This was designed in Denmark, and this is a floater. When it comes to securing commercialization, optimizing weight is very important, and design is also one of the parts, and installation, operation, maintenance, optimization is very important. So what we pursue with the Tetra, the wind turbine price is very cheap, and it already became the mass manufacturing. So this is, I think, one of the best concepts. Of course, beside this, there are a lot of models for this, but we also have a lot of interest in various models. If we complete the Heori 1 project successfully, then with 1 or 2 years time gap, we will proceed with Heori 2 and Heori 3. And by 2027, we have a plan to operate it. Not only these, additionally, a gigawatt scale of project will be made. In this way, Korea's decarbonization will be supported. And next, I will talk about the project that we have pursued and what kind of procedures we have made so far for the successful Ulsan's project. In 2018, we established the corporate body in Seoul, and there are about 20 personnel, and half of which come from foreign country. They are foreign experts. To proceed the Ulsan's project, we signed an MOU in January 2019 with SKENS. And we also made an agreement for mutual prosperity with fishermen in Ulsan. And we also concluded our agreement with local companies for floating offshore wind. And last year, September, we established through a floating measuring equipment. Currently, we are working on the licensing process for generation business, as well as for measuring wind condition. And let me briefly talk about the future timeline. We're pushing 3 different complexes, as you can see here, and the distance between the transmission station and our site is about 70 kilometers, and it has about 130 meters and 40 meters of depth, water depth. And when it comes to wind condition, and the average speed of wind is 8.5 meter per second, and the capacity is about 520 megawatt from the end of this year and until the first quarter of next year. We will complete our procedure for licensing, and we will also complete our agreement for power transmission and distribution. And by 2024, we will complete all this procedure. And by the end of 2024, and we will start to make a financial agreement and start our construction. And there are 2 key pillars of our project. One is the strategic alliance with local partners. And so local partnership is very important, and it lays the foundation for successful results. Currently, with SKENS, we're working on Ulsan's floating offshore wind project, and furthermore, and with the private generating companies, we have made PPA agreement, and that's what we are planning for maintenance and operating. And COP is the leader and in charge of that. Another pillar for successful project is localization strategy, I believe. As you can see from this photo on this slide, remaining the total BOP, it accounts for 70% of our project cost. It may increase, according to different projects. But BOP takes a huge part of it. So it wouldn't make sense, or it would be very difficult if we have to import every part of it. That's why localization is not an option but a requirement. So there are so many companies located in Ulsan, and we are trying to make close partnership with local companies as well as foreign companies and companies across Korea. And this is the pursuing business model of our company globally. Especially in Taiwan, we already proved its effectiveness, so we will definitely apply this model in Ulsan as well. So with the 2 pursuing pillars, we are planning to finalize the Ulsan project successfully. If we do that, we can think of 2 major effects. Not only in Ulsan, if we successfully complete gigawatt scale project across the country, then we can definitely make contribution to Green New Deal and net zero goals. And realistically, and we can host a fund domestically, and through which we can create tremendous amount of jobs locally, and relevant industries. And I also believe that in this way our company can contribute to establishing industrial ecosystem in Korea. And through Ulsan's floating offshore wind project, so many companies locally can gain experiences and expertise. And then if we make a successful case for commercialization, and I believe Korean supply chain can successfully make inroads into the overseas market as a leader in this field, and I strongly believe that, and I will do my best to advance this happening soon enough. And thank you very much. Thank you very much, CEO, for your good presentation. So far we have heard 5 different presentations, and with these various projects, I truly hope that Ulsan's industrial ecosystem will further prosper. And we have two more presentations.
발표해 주시겠습니다. 여러분 큰 박수로 맞이해 주시면 되겠습니다.
We'll have General Manager Park Chung-chul from the KNOC, and he will talk about the current project.
안녕하십니까. 한국석유공사.
Thank you for the introduction. I am General Manager Park Chung-chul from the KNOC. And from the previous 5 presentations, we heard some technical and informative points made about the floating offshore wind farm, and my presentation will focus on some different points compared to other projects. As you know well, the KNOC for the last 20 years has built the gas production platform, the first and the only one in Korea. And unfortunately and sadly, we have to say goodbye to the platform next year. So we are planning to reuse this platform into the substation for the floating offshore wind farm. So this is the key differentiation point compared to other projects. So this is the Donghae 1 project, and Equinor and KNOC and the East-West Power are the owners of the project. And we collected the wind situation, the data about the wind situation for a year. And by the end of this year, we're planning to incorporate a company, a special purpose company, to continue the project. And the gas production platform is 58 kilometers away from the point, the onshore point. And similar to other projects, the water depth is 80 meters to 100 meters, and the LiDAR says the wind velocity is on average 8.31 meters per second. And we will be able to load 8 megawatt turbine to the 25 floaters. And the 154 kilometers is the specification of the cables we're going to use for the transmission to the onshore. And these cables will be built along the pipeline of the gas platform. And the KNOC and EWP are involved in the project, so we are required to conduct the feasibility study. And in May 2021, we passed this feasibility test by the government. And this feasibility study required 1.68 trillion won, 550 billion won per year. And the profitability is 1.2%. And so in terms of profitability and feasibility, the project completed the government screening. And we are planning to apply for the file an application for the licensing in November. And through the EPC and other procedures, we'll start producing start generating electricity in 2026. And it's going to produce 778 gigawatts per year, and capacity utilization rate is 44.2%. And the expected result from this project is the reduction of 230,000 tons of greenhouse gas annually, and it also expected to create 17,000 new jobs. And it's completely in line with the Green New Deal policy and renewable energy of the central government. And it'll also be an early mover and an industry shaper in all the future renewable energy projects. And this is the current progress of the project. And as was mentioned by previous presenters, acceptance by the fishing communities and localization are the two key factors of the project. So for the acceptance of the fisheries community, starting from February this year, we started consulting and discussing with the fishing communities whose mainly fishing port is within our water areas. And we also talked with stakeholders, and as a result of the discussion and consultation, we were able to secure the consent form by the resident community. And there are 4 groups and organizations that are against the project. So these are the rest of the tasks that we have to focus in improving, in promoting the acceptance level. So if the private-public consultation body is formed, led by the Ulsan city, maybe we can jump in to do the correct analysis for the damages by the fishing community and how we can compensate for those damages, etc. So we are going to do our best to minimize the damages. And next one is localization. So in 2000, we concluded an MOU with 4 mid-sized companies and big companies and 8 mid-sized companies to take care of the technical matters. So currently, the recognition level, the awareness level is not really high and mature among the Korean companies. So especially for technical maturity, we haven't reached the level that we need. So in terms of what type of technology we need and what type of technical level we have to reach, I think we have to continue discussion and our collaborative relations with the mid-sized and big-sized companies. And at last is the KNOX strategy for the growth policy. So I told you we're going to reuse the gas production platform, and we are running out of the storage space. So we are reviewing the CCS technology, and maybe we can contribute to the central government's policy of renewable energy 3020 if we use the CCS strategy. And we're also continuously reviewing a new project area for hydrogen industry and hydrogen project. So this part is also included in the scope of our project review. Thank you for listening. Thank you very much for the presentation, Director Park. And we've just wrapped up all the presentations for this session. And this is the end of the first day of the International Forum of Floating Offshore Wind Farm 2021. And thank you very much again for the patience and interest of all the audience watching this event online. And we will have 3 sessions tomorrow, and also a special session under the green production of the offshore wind energy. And I'll see you tomorrow, and thank you again.